Welcome to Elder Speak, Journey to Wisdom 2023. Thank you for coming. My name is Teresa Dulitzenberger, and I am one of the facilitators for Elder Speak and staff on the Ripple Foundation. We welcome you here to Elder Speak, Journey to Wisdom 2023. Thank you for coming. My name is Teresa Dulitzenberger, and he's streaming, so it's coming through the streaming. So it's nice to know what I sound like. So I'd like to start out by thanking Icicle Creek Center for the Arts for this beautiful Snowy Owl Theater. Isn't it a beautiful place here? Yeah. I'd also like to thank Eric, Frank, and Craig Root for their technical assistance, even if sometimes there's a few glitches. And I'd like to thank some of our other sponsors, Wenatchee Valley Museum, Wenatchee Tech Center, the, let's see, I better make sure I don't miss someone, Kashmir Valley Bank, Wenatchee Valley Dispute Resolution Center, and Dan's Food Market. Thank you to all of the sponsors.
Hi, I'm Robin Bohl. I'm also a facilitator. This is my 4th year of working with these two amazing individuals that started this program 9 years ago. So Elder Speak is a journey to wisdom, and we have 5 amazing elders this year who have spent 9 months delving into their stories and to find out what's underneath them and what they have learned. This year we have Julie Ryan and Dick Ryan and Liz Saunders and Andre Nowacki and Pat Turner. And we will be listening to their wisdom this afternoon. Thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Deb Pobst, and I'm on the staff of the Ripple Foundation and a facilitator for Elder Speak. I just want to share that this program for these elders began in January. And they soon found themselves being filmed and interviewed by the high school students of Eric Link's class at the Wenatchee Valley Tech Center. These interviews go for an hour to 2 hours. And the students then edit this down to, they've created a 17-minute video that we will show you next. We're so impressed with the students, and we're impressed with the elders and the way they opened themselves up to the students and to this experience. So we hope you enjoy the film, and thank you again for coming.
I've been a home builder for 40 plus years, and I have found that every home needs a good foundation. And the foundation for my life was set by my elders. My grandfather, my parents set the foundation for how I've come along in my life and developed. I was born in 1944 in Colfax, raised on a small farm in La Crosse. Well, I'm pretty optimistic and look at things as they will happen, and just you got to work at it, but things will come around. I don't know if I really listened or just I absorbed watching and hearing them, and I've always been I've never said I can't do something. I said I can do it. There's a book out there. Nowadays there's YouTube that will help you do anything you want to try to do. And I haven't had fear. I mean, if it's electrical and grabbing a wire or something, I don't have fear. It might shock me, give me a jolt, and I feel it's not going to kill me, but I'll learn. I knew I could get a job. There were people in Kashmir, there was a few, that said, actually one or two told me, oh, you got a job in La Crosse, you can go back and farm. Well, that wasn't my goal. That wasn't part of my plan. And with Julie, I said, well, as being a journeyman carpenter, and I'd built for people, and I knew I could get a job with working for somebody. And Julie said, no, you can be your own boss, and you can do it, and I'll help you. With her persistence and patting me on the back and saying you can do it, it worked out that it took a few years. First few years I didn't make a lot of money. Oh, I think definitely teaching had to help me and support me. Dealing with people, dealing with children. Everybody's different. And everybody in the room or you're dealing with has different ideas, different thoughts, and ways of learning. So you got to take each person separately and work with them. I try to deal honestly with them, not to put people down, deal with them as they are and what their needs are. I think I'm fairly good at reading people, understanding people, and being compassionate with people and treating them fairly. Well, listening to people's desires and say, oh, I understand, I hear you. We'll see what we can do about that. I mean, everybody needs some compassion to feel warm, comfortable in the situation they're in.
My name is Andre Nowacki, and I was born in Poland, in the city of Lublin, which is eastern part of Poland, 1 year before the Second World War. Then the Soviets, which came from the east, installed a communist government in Poland. In the age of about 17, I started to climb. Maybe there was about, in this time, Poland, I don't know, maybe 10 climbers like that, who was able to travel abroad. Nobody in Poland could travel abroad. In this time, it was impossible. That gave me a chance, not only being in the Alps, seeing big mountains, much larger than anything in Poland, but gave me a chance to learn different society. Part of my happiness being and climbing in the mountain was a small community in the mountains. We are away from the whole system. We could speak whatever we wanted to. We never worry about that. We were far away. Mountains was a part of that. Being independent, being in the mountains when you have to make all the decisions, quite often return and get out of it, allows me in my life to make the risky maybe decision from time to time, like crossing from Germany to France with thinking, well, that's what I want to do, really. And part of being involved so much in climbing, I think, gave me this idea. My father quite often said to me, I didn't have a chance to go to Polytechnic or to university. I would be proud if you would do that. And that was very important to me, whatever I think about it. I was in kind of moment so much involved in climbing and such a good results in the Alps and so on that I thought, well, I quit the Polytechnic and electronics. I am going to climb. Nonsense. When you're 20-something years old, you may think like that, but it was nonsense. And my father, very well dealing with that, never yell on me, never make any pressure, just talk to me. He said, "Do finish that. I'll be so proud if you can be engineer, if you will know," and so on. And that was very, very helpful for me. another part of the freedom for me is this beauty and the great country size. This freedom that you can go to Florida and be in tropical forest, and you can go to the northern part of Yukon Territory and be in between the glaciers. This is fantastic for me. That's part of a freedom, that I can jump in my car and go there or whatever else. I think you have to decide what you want to do in a life, really, and follow that, and try to realize that we are all under influence of people around us. But on the end, you have to look really in yourself. Is that what I want to do? And then follow that as best as you can. I kind of think so.
Well, I was an only child, raised about 7.5 miles up the Antioch Valley in a third-generation home that my great-grandfather built. I was a senior, and 2 days before Christmas, we'd just gotten out for Christmas vacation. And four friends, we went to, or 3 other friends, we went to Wenatchee, but the problem was it was snowing really hard. So on the way back home, in front of the State Highway Department, we hit a snowplow. I don't have a lot of memory, mainly of what people told me. So anyway, so they woke me up from the 13th surgery and said they had to amputate my leg. And one thing that immediately brought me to tears, and this was like, I don't know, 15 years after my parents had died. And the girl asked, what was the hardest thing about losing your leg? Immediately teared up. Was watching my dad cry. Well, when I was in the hospital for those 3 months, totally losing control, I couldn't even move my bed. It had a crank at the foot of the bed. And in those 3 months, I decided I was going to college. And nobody would have that much control over me again. Otto Ross, a ski instructor. I skied since I was 5, okay? And I took lessons from Otto when I was like 12. Anyway, so he came to my parents and asked them if they thought I wanted to ski again. And they said, well, ask her. And I didn't even hesitate, sure. But Otto saved my emotional life. All of a sudden, I could feel the wind in my face. I was out in the fresh air. I was physically doing something that I loved. Over the past 10 years, being the elephant in the room and talking to people and talking about what I do and what I've done, you should write a book. You should write a book. You should write a book. Okay. It was the first thing that I wanted to do that I couldn't. I couldn't. But what I needed to say was, I can't do it right now. But like I said, the right people fell in the right place, and I got it done. And I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of it. And I would always do an inspirational talk about, you can see my disability. You can see my challenge, but you can't see everyone's challenge. And so I use this as a tool to teach kids about how to treat people. Would you change it? And I did think about it. I mean, life on 2 legs would be easier. But I said no. I would not have had the opportunities that I've had. My experience, everything that has happened that's challenged me, there has been something good down the road. But I know when something good happens, I'm going to be challenged again. So I just keep getting up.
I was born in 1941, and that was right in the middle of wartime. I lived in the city of Kiel, Germany, northern Germany, on the Baltic Sea. And of course, my brother and I were the youngest in the family. They brought by the truckloads all the houses that had broken down in the city. Kiel was a big city, but it was destroyed 88%. So there was a lot of material to clean up with a little hammer. We each had our own hammers. And they used the same brick to build the new houses. So we learned right from our childhood on that survival was one of the most important things in life. And you had to do it whether you were 4 years old or you're 40 years old. And there was no feeling bad about it or going on strike. If you did, you didn't eat. So we all wanted to eat 3 meals a day. Sadness came to our house too. I was on a bicycle trip in Denmark with my 5 children and got a call from my husband that he wanted a divorce. So that was probably the most dramatic thing I've ever had in my 80 years. I had, in the meantime, accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as my Savior. I felt like a whole package, good for the earth and good for heaven. And it was really the best personal teaching that I ever had. You never say a divorce is good, but it was an enormous time for me to wake up and count myself as a citizen of the earth like everybody else. Not more, not less, not more capable or less capable. You're just that person that needs to live this life. So in this divorce, I bought half the house for my husband. It was a good thing. I had a very beautiful house, and it was right downtown Leavenworth. House Lorelei existed as a business for 20 years, and that probably was the richest time that I can ever tell anybody. I'm made for service, that's for sure. That's very clear to me. I have happy times and I have sad times, but they all have a purpose. You know, it's not one is good, one is bad. We need both of them. I need both of them.
So I was born in Missoula, Montana, November 6, 1946. Prior to going to school, our mother had introduced us to books and the Carnegie Kalispell Library, which was a wonderful, magical type of place. So I loved books and I loved anything reading about books and adventures. And that teacher, whose name I don't remember, my sister doesn't remember her name, she one day made the comment to me, "You would make an excellent teacher." Well, wow. Oh, that was so awesome. From then on, from 3rd grade on, to become a teacher was my goal. Well, I already was an excellent teacher as that. And most of the time, my mom was a good person to be around, happy, definitely loving, a loving mother. But there were these scary things. In May of 1970, she took her life. And my 16-year-old brother found her in the basement. He was the one that held it together. Even though my mother, and I didn't find out till later, my mother was diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenia. But we've learned a lot. We've learned not to take life for granted. Life is precious. We've learned to listen to people and to really look at them. And I think for me, it really helped me in my relationship with all people. It definitely helped me with teaching. I absolutely loved teaching, and I realized that relationship with people is key to happiness and key to success. And once I started saying to my students that we were a family and you're part of the family of room 403, it really changed the dynamics of the classroom. Because if you're a family and you care about each other, then your treatment of each other is different. So moving on from that, that's the most powerful part of my story that affected me the most. I think virtually everyone who's lived any amount of time, so that means not a 5-year-old, or maybe even a 10-year-old, but even as teenagers, I think everybody has things in their life that are hard to deal with for one reason or another. You gotta believe in yourself. You've got to.
Oh, there we are. Mark, can you help Pat? And it's time for the elders to come on stage. Liz, Andre. There we go. So, just to let you know what's happening, the elders are all moving as the family group that they have become around to come up the wheelchair ramp and to become seated. They will then begin to tell they're each given 10 minutes to share their wisdom. And we ask that you hold any questions that you might have until the last elder has shared. And then Morgan, who is over there, will run the questions for us, especially those that are online. And Lissy Ott will run the mic for any of you in here who have a question. So we'll be just another minute getting everyone seated, and we'll begin. Liz, you're okay. So we are beginning with Dick Ryan. Dick, you create comfort in a room just by your presence. You bring quiet confidence to all you do, and your can-do attitude is inspiring. I especially appreciate your open-hearted generosity. Your wisdom statement is, be curious, keep learning, then the knowledge you have gained can be given back to others. Why is it important to share our gifts? And how has doing that made a difference in your life?
Well, being curious is something I've been with me my whole life. Growing up curious and learning about things. As a child, being raised on a wheat farm, my father was very involved in the farming and repair equipment and that. And at a young age, I was in his right pocket, following him around, learning his activities. By the time I was a teenager, I could weld, I could cut, I could repair machinery. And this knowledge, curiosity, and learning just followed me throughout my life. My grandfather was important in my life. He actually owned the wheat farm. He had a cattle farm, had sheep, horses. So I was involved with him a lot, and was a mentor to me very much through my growing up ages. My mother and father were always supportive of anything I wanted to do. I remember one time they said, "No, you can't do that." And I was going to build a gyrocopter, and they says no. But other than that, most activities, they supported me. They were there. They helped me get through it. Being an only child, I didn't have competition with siblings. My best friend, it seemed like, was our dog Pat, and he followed me everywhere, and we played outside. And on a farm, you're out where there's nobody around you. Nearest neighbor was probably 2 miles away. But then in La Crosse, I had 3 aunts and my grandparents. I had 6 cousins close by, so I had a lot of family close to me. Growing up and being mentors to me.
So Dick, I'm going to interrupt you and just ask you, what would you say to help people who don't have that kind of childhood, who don't have the mentoring or the grandfather or the father? What can you say toward that?
Yes, I was very fortunate to have these people be there for me and to help me. And I think back of Mr. Rogers' mother telling him, look for helpers around you. And this can go for anybody when you're growing up or even as an adult. Look for helpers to help you get through times and things you don't know or things you can't do, or for support. It could be a teacher, it could be a friend, it could be your neighbor. There are a lot of places where people can be to help you and to basically survive.
And when you do help, when you are that helper, what does it bring to you personally?
Okay. Throughout the years, been a contractor for 30 plus years and worked with many different people, and I've learned a lot of knowledge through those years, and to be able to help people build a home, which is they're spending more money on it than anything else they normally spend money on, and to make an investment there and to share my knowledge with them. Every home I built through the years, I felt I was building as my own home. I put my own heart into it. And when I retired, the high school class in Kashmir had a construction class, and I went back for 3 years until COVID stopped it. And in the construction class, mentored and helped the students, and I shared my knowledge in building, and they were building storage buildings and items like that. And to have, it brings back the time when I was teaching. 9 years I taught in Kashmir in the construction field, and to be able to share my knowledge with young people and with the other people around, it was just warms my heart.
So we just have a couple minutes left. How do you feel? What are the... I know just from being with you in this group that when you are one of the most generous people I have met, and your heart opens and warms the whole room. I just want some words from you on how being generous, how sharing your gifts affects you, your heart, your soul, your mind?
From young ages, I was involved with many activities, and in college, I was involved with the honorary service fraternity. After college, I've been after I got married, I've been involved with Rotary Club, the Kashmir Museum, Kashmir Community Church, and 9/11 Memorial. And I just feel giving back to the community, or giving back what I have to offer, it makes me feel so good and warms my heart to sit back and look at like the 9/11 Memorial and the Phase 2 that I was involved with. There's things that have happened at the Kashmir Museum, things that have been going on at our Kashmir Community Church. It just is very heartwarming to me to give service above self.
Thank you, Dick. Thank you. Okay, Liz. Liz, you bring structure and order into all you do. And you use these gifts to be of service to the world. I see your graciousness, your courageous sense of adventure, and your willingness to step into the unknown. Your wisdom statement is, life offers success and sadness, laughter and tears. We need both in equal measures to become useful in our community. Liz, your wisdom statement speaks about the balance of life. Why is it important to embrace both our successes and our failures?
I didn't know such a wise, is this working?
Yes.
I didn't know such a wise wisdom years ago when I came here. It's just a life that I lived that was different. And it's true, I'm an adventurer, so I easily left Germany. And then I got married to Richard Saunders. And we had our first little child, Bettina, and he just bought a trailer and a camper, and we were going to scout out Seattle and Port Angeles. Well, on the way, somebody told us about Leavenworth and said, you have to go through that little city. So Highway 97, here we come, drove right into Leavenworth, Washington. The next morning, my husband was already dealing with a man in town that he met, and Ted Price, and he had houses and buildings and land, and well, we could just buy anything we wanted to, so we were going here. It took 5 years to get here because we had to take care of our business in Los Angeles, and that took 5 years. So by that time, we had been here many times and could hardly wait to get here. My husband bought the house from Ted Price, and it was called the Field House. Some of you must know it. It's down at the Boyne Beach Reserve down there. And it was built by the Lamb Davis Lumber Company for meetings. So it's very large. It has almost 12,000 square feet. And that can fit a lot of people. So guess what happened? We were new people here in our city, and they all wanted to know who we are. So we had a lot of guests, and a lot of our friends from Los Angeles followed us up here, wanting to come and live the way we lived. Everybody was looking. It's just a thing to do when you're in your 30s and your 40s. Well, we had 5 children already, and I took them on a trip on bikes to Denmark. And we heard about the divorce. I was notified that my husband wanted a divorce. And that seemed so very sad, but I don't even want to talk about it. We solved a problem, and I bought half the house from him. And we opened the doors, and it became a bed and breakfast. And it's not that I'm a very good planner or I'm clever to plan out life for probably not even a month or two from now. I do like to be more in the moment. And I know there's plenty to come, so I don't really have to worry about planning a lot. Sometimes that's not so good. You know, you can miss a flight, you can miss people that thought you were not coming or coming. But that's all part of my life. I'm not exactly always perfect person to do what I think I want to do. I have a lot of things on my mind that I want to do, and they don't always pan out. But the person that's doing it, me, I don't mind. I don't mind to be wrong. I don't mind losing something. I don't mind winning something. I can just go. So this bed and breakfast became a very lively, I want to say, clinic of psychology. People came and they couldn't believe my children. By that time, there's 5 children, and they're all working this bed and breakfast. And they did it the first 5 years. And they also went to school. And they also went swimming and did all the fun things. And here we had the guests. So one day, a person walked up to me and said, do you live here? They saw me in my house. Yes, it's my house. What's happening here? A little boy opened the front door for me, and he took me into the kitchen and looked at the computer, and he says, yeah, you go in this room, and he took me to my room. And this morning, he's serving me breakfast. Is there only kids here? It was true. There was only kids there. And they all had a lot of fun. They had learned to work also. I have this German blood, I think. We're very organized. So that we can have a lot of time playing outside. And
So
it
Liz,
became...
I'm going to have to interrupt you because we have 2 minutes left.
Okay.
And we are very curious about successes and failures. What role did the divorce play in your wisdom statement?
I became a Christian in 1970, and God became my father and my husband. And I learned to deeply love him when I was in trouble. And he helped me every day to get up and do what I need to do. Not to cry about it, not to fuss about it, but to always smile for the next day. And that was the test. In a divorce, that was a test. What can you do? So you build yourself a new life. You have to make that decision. I had a good time, and now it's not that I had a bad time. I just had a very demanding time to see a family through. And it isn't with any power but your mind to accept that. And I could see more and more that it was, I had to go look why I was suffering. And I found why and would not fight it, would let it be. And just go for it. Learn everything you can in your suffering, because it's for your good. And that's where I came up with that, the statement of not being afraid of good and not so good, or good and bad even, because we all need them to become user-friendly in life. And this bed and breakfast made me user-friendly, because I had to answer and love and feed very nice people and awful people. And I could learn to say to this awful person, you are the nicest person to even come to us. It meant nothing to me, but you get very, very savvy because they're looking to God for the next one. But it didn't happen very often. And our kids grew up loving what they had to do.
Thank you, Liz.
Pat. Pat has shown phenomenal resilience. There we go. Some of that too.
She got it right the first time.
Resilience in her life. No matter how hard it has been, she knows she will be okay. She's an inspiration to very, very many people. She connects with people in all walks of life, bringing joy with her many acts of kindness. Your wisdom statement is, what happened in my car wreck when I was a senior in high school does not define who I am. How I move forward is what matters. Your book, Pat, has been and still is quite the journey for you. Your book is an incredible example of your ability to move forward. Can you share with us what it has meant for you to write the book and all you went through to do that? And now that you're sharing the book with the community, what that has meant in your life?
Well, I've been very active since I was a senior in high school and lost my leg. And there was never a time that I was going to give up. And the more I talked to people, like on vacation or explaining why I have one leg, even to kids in school, okay, this story needs to be told. Well, I met my publisher, author, friend in a beginning watercolor painting class. And we just hit it off, and so we went to have lunch. And by the time I told my story, she said, there's a story that needs to be told. I'll help you with that. Well, that's good, because I had no interest in writing. I had never written except essays in high school and college. And I didn't know where to start. And she encouraged me. The people came along to encourage me. And fast forward, by the grace of God, I got it done. But it took like about 10 years. I'd write, get discouraged, quit. Write. And every block I had put up in front of myself saying, listening to the editor on my shoulder, this invisible person saying, nobody cares about what happened to you. Just forget that. Your story doesn't mean anything. Everybody's got a story like that. Well, they don't, but we all have instances in our life that were challenges and are probably still challenging, and we just don't know. I mean, you can see my challenge. I can't see yours. And that was a good lesson I had for my students, is that, you can't have too many friends, and you can't encourage anyone too much. And that is what's kept me going through the rough spots, which there's been quite a few, and the good spots. And in my book, you'll cry, you'll laugh, you'll say, really? Wow, no. And everything in between. And I try to mix the trauma with the funny stuff. And there's some interesting, just don't talk to my husband. And so, anyway, in writing the book then, in getting it published, I'm amazed at the responses I've gotten for being a first-year author who never wrote. But the way I started writing was for my friend's online magazine, and I started writing short stories. But to write a book is daunting, sitting in front of that computer screen. And by yourself, it's a very solitary act of just getting your life on paper. But it makes a difference because I needed to decide who am I writing this book for? And it was for anyone who needs encouragement through anything. Oh, I think that's just about everybody. And that's what kept me going, thinking that I was going to help somebody. I mean, I've been a teacher all my life, all the way from the hospital to the procedure that ended up costing my leg outside of the injuries in my wreck. And it's all in the book, the trauma that I went through. And I taught the doctors, you do not put a hard cast on a newly injured limb without consequences. And those are my consequences. As a result, the swelling, lack of circulation, I had a severe burn on the calf of my leg when they took the cast off. Well, 13 debridings of that dead skin, and they found gangrene. And so I taught the doctors something. I taught the nurses, listen to your instructors, don't get attached to your patients. But 3 months in the hospital, they got attached to me. And they were standing by their station as I was being wheeled to surgery for the amputation, crying. So I'm approachable, especially now in a wheelchair. I'm not scary, I'm not threatening. And people, I smile at people and I look them in the eye and I want to help everybody. And I like to make people happy. And they've given so much to me. So, go ahead. I know you have something else.
I'd like to ask you, you went through an incredible thing to write that book, having to review all of your trauma and try and figure out how to put it down. Would you recommend other people that have been through trauma, not, any kind of trauma, was writing a good experience, and would you recommend it to other people?
When I was in the process of writing, it was very painful and it was very traumatic, and I would have to stop because it took me over 10 years to get it all down on paper because I would edit the life out of it. But so I kept circling around in those 3 months in the hospital, and that was not a fun circle. And but my story is down now, and the response I'm getting from people. Don't tell my husband this, because he told me if I was going to write another book, he'd shoot me from what he went through. But I almost need to write a book about the people that read my book, because we've all got a story, and they want to share their story too. So I've listened to a lot of story, and I've got a lot of, I've been encouraged by me sharing my trauma with people and allowing them, and their families need to know also. My family is Joe, and the rest of them, I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for people that I don't even know that now I'm friends with.
Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
Andre, it's your turn. Thank you, Pat. That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you all so far. Yeah. Now it's Andre's turn.
My turn.
Andre, wait. I've got something to say.
Okay. Go ahead.
You bring so much humility and humor to everything you do. And you think outside the box. You're very creative. All your engineering and things that you've done over the years, learning to fix TVs while learning English while you were in California. You are very kind to others, and you have your own way of living your life. You live your own life. It's wonderful. Your wisdom statement is, our life is in constant change. We must adapt and realize we are under intense scrutiny, intense social influence. we must find our own way. So, Andre, how does one find one's own way?
I think the basic secret to it is the ability to be critical, to be able to think whatever that maybe is not like what you think about it. Try to, perhaps that's my engineering experience and a little bit of science which I learned. You have to constantly be critical about your ability, what you think about it, and try to find, what's really true about it. I think so, but anyway, I think I have to tell a few things about my experience in life in Poland very shortly, simply because I think it's extremely difficult for us to explain how the life looked like in a place like Poland under Soviet regime, really. First, which I really experienced, that was when I tried to apply to Polytechnic. Simply, if you belong to the Youth Communist Party, you have a much better chance to get to the school. And it was a competitive, really, way, and there was not enough place for everybody. So that was once when I started to study, you are constantly under this influence. What you think, what you're doing, with whom did you talk about it, and so on. So I think it was my first experience with that, and that was whole life like that. I get to tell you a little short and funny story about that. I was arrested once in my life, to this point in time anyway. and crossing border from Poland to anywhere else was privilege. You could not do that, the normal person. But because I was living in southern part of Poland, in the foot of the mountains, and Slovakia was on another part of the mountains, south from us, and there were more mountains in Slovakia, we constantly, of course, crossed the mountain illegally to the high places which no border patrol could possibly do it, simply because living in this kind of regime and control, we consider as everybody smart and clever who can break the possible laws and do the rules. My involvement in climbing brought a lot of that to me too. The ability to be in a group of people which is not an influence, or we are far away from a society and we could, do whatever we wanted to. But the funny stories which I want to tell you is I was arrested once on the border between Poland and Slovakia. Well, I had a legal papers. I could cross and be 2 weeks in Slovakia. That was not easy to achieve, but I achieved it. But I didn't have enough money for a border patrol. He asked, how much money do you have? I had very little, just for buy a ticket on a bus, where I wanted to meet a friend, Slovak. And that was suspicious to them, so they searched me. I was with my friend, so they searched him too. And they found in my wallet a little drawing written by my Slovakian friend, how to find a coffee shop in a little town of Slovakia. They look on that and said, that's illegal. To have a plans of a city immediately is illegal. So they arrested me, put us, the two of us in the basement, kept us for about 15 minutes, but finally they decided that nothing what to do, said, okay, you can cross the border. We crossed the border, and Slovak arrested us immediately because of the plan, because of the drawing how to find a coffee shop in Slovakia.
So, Andre, I can see why you fear not fear, maybe that's too strong a word, social influence on young people, on any of us.
Yeah.
Because you were so impacted by that.
Oh, yes, certainly.
So how does one find their own way?
Well, I think, again, you cannot accept everything what is around you without being a little critical about it.
So being critical is
Yeah,
a big
I think that's
important.
essential. Even in our society, we have a tremendous influence of whatever we wanted to do, really. Not only society, but the pressure of buying things and so on. You have to analyze that a little bit. But anyway, you know, they arrested us, and there was a funny story. They took us finally upstairs, and I remember in the room, there was a soldier sitting by the typewriter in the uniform, and there was a man much older, you know, that of course I was probably 20 about that time, in civilian dress, walking in a pants on a suspender, playing with a suspender, and he started like a father to me. Oh, Beth, you are in terrible situation. What do you do? I said, I am a student in Polytechnic. Oh, he said, you will never study anymore. Oh, this is bad, really. And this kind of fatherly, why did you do what you're going to do in Slovakia? I wanted to meet a friend, but I was afraid to say his name even. I said, no, we are just in the mountains, going to be in the mountains. And finally, you know, he stopped with the fingers on suspender and he yelled to me, where is your pushka? Pushka is the kind of word which in Slovakian means a gun, in the Polish means a can, like a soup can. So, you know, I understood what is pushka, but I was so surprised that pushka, I don't understand. He started to yell to me, you know, you understand what's pushka, where are your guns, and so on. Finally, you know, let us go after a while, and we couldn't go already to meet my friend. We went in the woods. We spent a cold night. That was end of the fall in the woods, and the next day we crossed the border back to Poland. So, you know, that's the situation that we constantly have to deal with. In '61, I was really sent to climb on the north face of Matterhorn in the winter. We wanted to be the first one. We didn't. We were second finally, but...
So we have one more minute.
Okay. But finally, you know, I met there, we met, there was three of us, we met the three American young girls. They came to ski in Zermatt. They would study French in southern part of France. And we went maybe 3 times to have a coffee together and so on. And then I went back to Poland after my climb, and the girls went back to France. I have no idea. 5 years later, I came to Switzerland again, sent for the Polish government, basically to climb on the face of Eiger. And the first day when I arrived there, we went to buy ourselves a beer in a little hut, and the waitress listened to us talking. She said, where are you from? What language do you speak? And I said, I speak Polish and German in this time. And she said, oh, I met a Polish climber in Zermatt in '61, 5 years before. I said, I was in Zermatt in '61. That was my future wife.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Thank you, Andre. Okay, Julie.
Okay.
Last but not least.
Yeah.
Julie, you strongly value others, and you help others feel like family. You reflect to people their higher qualities all the time. And you have a way that helps people feel they matter in their most special way. Your wisdom statement is, sacred beauty is created when every relationship is built on kindness. Please talk more about the importance of relationship in your life and how kindness played a role in them.
Okay, I was born in Montana in 1946, in northwestern Montana, and I was blessed to be born in Montana. Matter of fact, Montana is the reason why I'm here, because northwestern Montana, Moise is where I lived the first 4 years of my life. You've probably never heard of it. It's 40 miles northwest of Missoula, where I was born, and Moise is a small farming community, and it's right next to the National Bison Range, so that kind of gives you an idea, very rural. Mountains, trees, lakes, rivers, everything you see around here is what I was raised with. And I feel blessed to be here. I'm supposed to be here. Anyway, my family was a very loving family, kind and loving. I have nothing but good and wonderful memories, and I have a snapshot memory that I think is my earliest memory of being in a hay wagon with my older brother. He was a year and a half older than me, and bouncing along in this hay wagon and laughing. And I think I was like 3 or so. And I looked to the front, and there's my dad's strong, broad shoulders guiding the 2 workhorses, Silver and Pearl, to the barn with the load of hay. And oh, it's just a warm, beautiful memory. And about 4 and a half, our family moved from the farm where we were not making much money, sold the farm and moved to Kalispell, the big city of Kalispell, still very rural, 40 minutes from Glacier National Park. My mother was just elated. She was very social, very outgoing, very friendly, very kind, and finally she could be in the big city and see neighbors every day, see the shopkeepers. There was no one who was a stranger. It didn't matter if it was a drunk. It didn't matter if it was a child. She was very friendly, and she loved it. Also, just a short distance from our little apartment was the Carnegie Library. Oh, what a magical place. My mother loved to read. She took us there long before school, that we were in school. And that's where I learned my love of reading. The opposite direction, 4 blocks, was Elrod Elementary School. My mother loved school when she was growing up, the one-room schoolhouse in Winston, Montana. Told me so many stories about that time. And she was only permitted to go through the 8th grade, but loved it. Couldn't wait till I went to school. Went the first day my brother went to school. My sister and I were both dressed in our best dresses, and my brother just looking sharp. And what? I'm not able to go to school? You mean it's just my brother? I have to wait a whole year? Well, that wasn't too cool. But I was delighted to be there and meet his teacher, Miss Myers. And what do you know? The next year, my first grade teacher was Miss Myers. And what do you know? A few years ago in Wenatchee, I got to meet my first grade teacher again. Her name was now Mrs. Fowler, Louise Fowler. She'd lived in Wenatchee for decades. They owned the Winnie's Hallmark store. And I got to celebrate her 90th birthday with my first grade teacher. It was very special. So,
Talk more about family.
okay, so my mother was a wonderful person. However, she was mentally ill, and I didn't really realize that. I mean, she was just my mother. Yes, she did some strange things, but it wasn't till many years later, actually just short time before Dick and I were to be married, less than a week. We didn't know whether we were actually going to be able to get married because there was an awful, terrible things that happened in our house. And I made the decision that the wedding would go on. 2 days after we were married, she went into the mental hospital. Anyway, moving on.
It was a very hard time.
It was a very hard time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wondered if I would made the right choice to marry my husband, or should I be staying there and helping with my mother? So I saw my mother twice after that. And she did eventually leave the hospital, but only because she convinced people that she was well, and she was not. And 9 months after I was married, and 9 months after my mother had gone into the mental hospital, she took her life. And that was tragic. I couldn't talk about it for years and years. But I want to not talk more about that because I want to focus on the positive things and the things I learned from that situation. Of course, anybody that has experienced having a family member with mental illness or has had a suicide, the tremendous guilt that you feel is just incredible. But my mother was very kind. She was very loving. And so many things about her influenced me. Because of her, I'm a teacher. Because of her, I love birds. Because of her, I love people. Because of her, I love relationships that focus on kindness, compassion, and caring. And the teaching aspect, oh my goodness, I absolutely loved teaching. Can't say that the first couple of years, because if you're a teacher or have any knowledge of how it is the first few years, it's pretty trying. I think the students are there to see if you're really going to stick it out. But the longer I taught, the more I realized that those students needed that classroom. They needed that place. And we became like a family. And the more I emphasized that we were a family in the classroom, the better it got. And the more I enjoyed it. And it got to the point where I would say to them, "You make my day. I can't wait to be here." And I meant it. And lo and behold, when I talked that way, well, then I was getting a similar response from them. And I think the two most critical times of the day for students are when you first see them or they first walk in the room and when they walk out of your classroom. You've got to make certain to have it warm and inviting when they come in. Make eye contact if you can. Say something to them. Maybe some of them need a touch. It's got to be a safe, warm, wonderful place. And the same happens when they leave. It's got to be that same way, that they feel good and want to come back. I can remember.
Julie, I've got to interrupt you. I would
right.
love to go
Okay.
on. But I want to leave space for people to ask questions. But I just want to reflect back that you work at making an environment that welcomes the children and other people. And I think that's one of the messages you're giving us
Yes.
also.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So now we hope you have questions for the elders. In the audience is Liz Siat, and Morgan Fraser will be answering questions online. For those online, tap on live chat or say something button underneath the video, And if that button isn't working for you, you may text the phone number 509-433-8109. Okay, I'm going to hand the mic to Lissy, and please ask your question.
Come on now, I know you're full of Ed.
Liz, I have known you for a lot of years, and I've always wondered why you bought a motorcycle at our senior age.
Well, it's the thing on the moment, you know, it's whoever you meet, whoever crosses your ways. I was never planning to ride a motorcycle. So one day, I think it was at Rotary. Most every adventurous thing with me happened at Rotary. And I said, well, the German people, they're friends of mine from way back when I was still in education. And they came and brought their motorcycles to Haus Lorelei. And then they've motorbiked back to the East Coast. And they said, oh, I'm coming with you. So I said, so long with him, so long with him. There was 3 of them. So it was just so much fun, I could hardly stand it. And so when I got home after that, I bought a motorcycle, a used motorcycle. I can't do this. I don't want to sit in the back seat. That looks like you're married and you can't ride a bike. Yeah. So I bought a motorcycle. And my son immediately thought that was a great thing, so he bought a motorcycle. So there was 2 of us. And then I had a son, Mikey, and he was more than anybody would want to raise. But on a motorcycle, you wouldn't know all the stuff that he was saying and doing. So, of course, we had no audience. So that was a great sport for him. He was very excited to go motorbiking, of course. And we went outward. There was not too many people, you know, not big cities or anything. But then came Rotary, and one guy said to me, you know, I just got back from Australia. I had the best time. You need to go to Australia. Well, 3 weeks later, I was on the phone. I went to Australia. And so we motorcycled Australia and Tanzania. That was with people from Australia, of course. I think I was the only American in that group. And it was, I can't even describe it. They would not have invited me here on the stage because I would have you here till next Friday to tell all the things that happened. So that was motorbiking. And Rotary, we went to Chicago, we went to New Orleans, we went to everywhere, 7 cities in the United States, always on motorbike. And I always drove with Harley boys. I think most of the men in Rotary have Harleys. And you know, some have BMWs. So I just always hung out with my Honda.
Thank you, Liz.
Then I needed 2 new hips. He already turned me off.
Thank you so much, Liz. Okay, we have a couple questions that have been coming up in the chat online for those of us who couldn't be with us in person. The next one is from, I'm probably mispronouncing his name, I think it's Jasic. It's a question for Andre. How did you decide to live in the United States?
You know, I never thought that I would come to the United States. When I left Poland illegally, I was hoping that I would be living somewhere in Western Europe. Switzerland was a great place, fantastic mountains, very naive, of course, way of thinking about it, I have no idea. But after struggle with the visas and permits and in the Western Europe, in Germany I spent 2 years. I never had the really ability to get a job because I had always visa for 3 months. Finally, Anne, my wife, decided, well, maybe we should go to America. She was not anxious either, simply because she wanted to be in Europe, in France mostly. So we came to, when we started to think about coming to Europe, I, with my friend in Munich, started to discuss how possibly, we know the mountains on the west side. We are going to land in New York. How the hell we are going to get so far? And he came with a wonderful idea. He said, we are going to get a cow. Cow is going to walk. We will walk behind the cow. Cow is going to eat the grass. We will milk the cow and then go next day further. but, you know, finally, yes, we came to America. I learned the distances. I learned probably the most important things which I learned from America at all. I learned what really means to be in a democracy. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that this is a matter of a constant balance, constant challenging each other, and finally compromise without killing yourself. That was, I think, quite a bit help of my wife. And once when we got to America, of course, I dreamed, and we both wanted to be in the mountains. So we finally crossed without a cow, but in a car to the west side, sleeping mostly in our car, and got a job in a little town, Dunsmuir, California, on the foot of Mount Shasta. Again, big mountain, I need to be there. And she's got a job in the school teaching, and I was kind of basically hiking around. I didn't understand anybody. I'll tell you this short story. And after a few weeks of being there, we rented a little place. A garbage man who came to empty our garbage every week came to me, was very friendly, said, I am coming here already a few weeks, and you are always sitting on the porch. Can you not do something? And I told him, well, I can fix the television. Oh, I said, good. Come to my place, people constantly giving me television. I don't know what to do with them. So I drove there and opened the double garage full of kind of console, furniture type of television. And he left me. He said, well, see what you can do. I started to swap the parts and so on. And when he came back, I had a few television working, not very well, but they were working. He said, boy, you are good. You should open TV service business. So I opened TV service business in Dunsmuir, California. Couldn't understand anybody. When some people were calling me, I was trying to catch on the one thing, the address. Once when I have address, I will figure out what is wrong. But, you know, I have to express that to you. I am still enchanted with America, with the spaces, with the fantastic mountains, with the tropical forests and glaciers, and so on. And I really feel at home here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, folks in the audience, you're looking shy. If anyone has a question, just raise your hand and Lissy will come find you. In the meantime, I've got other questions here, and I always have questions, so it ends up being my show if no one else joins in. This is a warning. Just a reminder that if you're calling from, or if you need to text, you can do that at 509-433-8109. We had another question for Elizabeth from Lynn. Having recently taken what could be your last trip home to Kiel, is that how you say it? Kiel? What is the greatest lesson that you learned from leaving home at such a young age?
Well, I left Germany and it wasn't really a real plan. Somebody just said we could do this. We were all done with school And there was another girl, a girlfriend, and she says, let's just do that. Let's just go to America. And you know, in California, there's streets of gold. So we can live a life that's just unbelievable. I said, well, that sounds good, because I come from a severe, strict family, and America sounded good. So I think I was on the plane like 5 weeks later to get a visa. It was very easy. They were looking for nannies. And I wound up in Chicago. That was my first year as a nanny in America. And I've had several things going to 66 down to Los Angeles. And I came over what is the highest point that comes down? New Mexico. I had to stop my car because I was going from east to west. And I said to myself, I stopped my car, got out, and I knew I had come home, and I belong here, and I need to stay here. I have never had a homesick day in my life.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, I'm still looking at all of you. Pat, I have a question for you. Anne Lamott is an author, and she has this really famous saying, which I'm basically just going to paraphrase, which is, if people wanted you to write nicely about them, then they should have behaved better. And I'm just wondering, you said something at the end of your share that made me wonder if there was anything that you had to debate whether or not to include it in the book because of how people might take it.
Well, the best advice I received before I wrote the book was, don't write it for anyone else. Or don't write it. If you fear putting something in, don't even think about it. So there's no one that, you know, I had negative, both the negative and the positive interactions or comments, like my high school counselor telling me not to worry about college, that I wasn't smart enough. You know, that made me stronger. And the good comments encouraged me. So it was a win-win, whether it was painful or not.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone out here have anything they want to ask? Oh, we've got one down here. Just 1 second, sir. Let Lissy get to you so that we can hear you.
What year did you come to North Central Washington, and were you welcomed by the local climbing community?
Yes, I was welcome very much, and very fast found the friends and people which I can go in the mountains and spend some time. We came we started to live in Leavenworth in 1980 and spent 37 years in Leavenworth. And, you know, climbing changed drastically from that what I knew. When I started to climb, it wasn't climbing little faces like today most of people do in the Icicle Valley. Our dream was always big mountains, get to the top, huge and complicated. That gives you a certain ability to make a constant decision, figure out how to get it. There's no one way to do it, really. And that was, I guess, called today alpinism rather than the climbing. But yeah, I found very fast friends here on this side of the mountain and in the other side of the mountain. I still meet them constantly. I don't climb anymore, of course. But we still do meet and talk about it. And yeah, it was easy.
Thank you, Andre. This might be one of my favorite questions I've ever heard. This person says, I've noticed how lovingly Julie looks at her husband, Dick, as he tells his life story. A question for Dick. Any advice for the husbands watching?
Always listen to your wife.
Okay.
mic on? Is my mic on?
You can add on that if you want, or is that?
Yeah.
The women are like, that's it, no more.
I had a question for Julie. How did you do that? That was.
I didn't really realize it until latter years, but first of all, my father, when I brought Dick home from Washington State to Kalispell to meet my family, and we hadn't been dating too long, my dad fell instantly head over heels in love with him before I was head over heels in love with him. And the reason why I figured out many years later is that he is so much like my dad. He's strong, he's reliable, he's honest, he's humble. And, I've kind of noticed a lot of people tend to marry someone who's like the opposite sex parent, I don't know. So he's wonderful, but he's mine.
Go ahead, Pat. Did you have something to say? Were you volunteering to take Dick away from Julie? Oh, no, wait, don't tell your husband, right?
Yeah, right. No. One thing I didn't mention is from a very early age, I adapted. And as an older person now, that is paramount in moving forward. Every decade brings a different challenge to me. Every activity I have chosen to do, the importance is my husband and I find something else. So the skiing, in my book it says why I stopped. Water skiing, why I stopped. Tandem bicycle riding for over probably 35 years, why I stopped. We didn't stop there. Then we went to, I have a fascination for up in the air. So when I was 70, I went skydiving, glider riding, zip lining, parasailing. And so I've got all those out of my system. So then the tandem riding stopped because I'm in the wheelchair now all the time, and my seat can't take the bicycle seat. So what do we do next? Well, now our activities, marketing my book, but we also, I wheelchair bowl. We're our third year on the league, and we dance now. So every activity that stopped, we found something to replace it to keep having fun.
That's good.
And that's so paramount to my aging.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. We've got someone else back here. Ed's got one.
Ed's back on.
Pat, there's a great bookstore in town, and I understand you've got a signing there next month.
I'm sorry?
Do you have a book signing at the bookstore?
Yeah.
Next month, if anyone wants a copy of your book.
Signed, I'm assuming, right?
Thank you, Ed. I'm sure your wife, Pat, thanks you too. Anyone else have a question? Okay, I get to ask one of mine. Julie, I really appreciated what you were willing to share about your mom and how hard that was on you. And I'm wondering if you have, what it was like for you. Did it feel like you were making a decision about whether or not you could save her or yourself when you decided to get married instead of stay? Or like, what was that like for you, and how did you work your way through it?
Okay, yes, that's excellent. And me thinking back, first of all, I realized our family was in a upheaval because my mother had committed a violent act, and she was not, we'd never seen her be violent at all before. And so our whole family was in disbelief. And I can remember that my older brother, Bob, who was there, and my father took her to our family doctor and left the house. And my younger brother was at work, and my sister must have been at work too. And I'm just thinking, okay, what do I do? Well, Dick was in the house asleep, and I had to go wake him up and tell him about what happened and let him know as he was heading back to Washington State. I don't know whether the wedding is on or off, and share with him, and I'll call you later. So he headed back to Washington State, and I'm just thinking, okay, what do I do? What do I do? Well, I had a teaching contract in Othello that was going to start in about a month. And I thought, okay, all right. And but I'm still thinking, and my brother came home, and my mother and my dad, and it was told that my mother had voluntarily committed herself to go to Montana State Mental Hospital. And I could tell nobody wanted to really converse with me about the wedding. That was kind of minor at that point. So I very quickly realized, okay, this is up to me. I've got to make this decision. And I thought, well, if my mother's going to be in the hospital, I can't be there. How can I help her if I can't be with her? And it was made clear that when she was committed, that no one was to visit for a while. Well, what do I do? Yes, I can kind of help my dad, but what about my fiance? I decided to make the decision to go ahead with the wedding, not even really knowing whether that was the right decision. But, sometimes you're in a quandary and there really isn't one answer that's the right decision. So I think you have to, and I'm sure some of the rest of you have been in these situations. And it's a major decision that you have to make. What decision are you going to make? And it's up to you. So you have to make a decision, and then you have to say, this is going to be right. I'm not going to go back to, well, if only I would have. If only I would have. I've made this decision. It's going to be right. I'm going to make it right. So I guess that's the best answer I can give.
Thank you. So that gives me a follow-up for Dick. What was it like trying to support Julie even as she was trying to decide whether or not your marriage was going to happen as planned during that time, and later when her mom committed suicide?
Well, today you have a cell phone. Back then, you had landlines with long-distance fees, so it wasn't easy to communicate. There wasn't internet, there wasn't any of the communication schedule. So I headed home not knowing what was going to happen in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, till she called me at home and said, we're going to continue with it, so with that part. In Montana at that time, you had to take a blood test before your wedding, so that's why I was in Kalispell that weekend, is a couple weeks for the wedding, and getting the blood test for that time. So I support her best way I could with the distance between us.
And when her mom ultimately decided to end her life, what was that like for you?
Well, that was in May of the next year. We were married and living in Othello, and it was right at the end of the school year, and at that time, school hadn't finished. I took her to Ephrata to catch the train to go back to Kalispell while I finished the little school. In retrospect, we should have both been going to Kalispell, driving over. But another part of it, she was there to help support her dad completely, and her brother was there at the time, and not have me involved at that time. But again, you don't know which way to go, what's right and what's wrong, and you do what you feel is the best you can do at the time.
Thank you. I've got more in here if you guys don't want to, but okay.
So I've got something else to say.
Sure, go ahead, Pat.
So I want to thank all you for coming, because the way I feel when I leave this stage, if I can do this, I can do anything. Thank you. Right?
All right, I get to ask my cornerstone question. If you've been coming to Elder Speak, you've heard me ask it of multiple groups of elders. So whoever wants to answer this is welcome. Is there anything that in your long lives, that may they continue on for much, much longer, is there anything that you thought was really important when you were younger that you have discovered was not near as important as you thought it was?
Well, I will say, I will say I didn't think this was important from the standpoint of importance, but I thought, why do I have to be so tall? Why, as a female, why do I have to be so tall and tower over all the boys? And, I did not like it. I think those people out there that know me know that I have said, my favorite song in high school was 5'2", Eyes of Blue. Not me. But I spent too much time worrying about that. I'm actually glad I'm tall now. And that kind of brings another thing here, that these people are all impressive. These elders are so impressive. And the reason why is they like themselves. They are fine with who they are. Tall, short, fat, with one leg. I mean, really, they are comfortable in their own skin. It's obvious.
Wonderful. Does anyone else have something they want to add?
I have a word which I can add to it. I should probably mention already, I was very involved in climbing. That was part of my life for many years. Today, when I look on that in the distance, I don't think that's so important. The phases which I climb, challenges which I did, the group of people, the people which I climb with,
yes,
that's the most important part of it. That's what makes the tremendous difference in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Pat.
I've learned that I listened to a lot of people when I was growing up, being a compliant girl. Well, that's behind me, but being, I listened to my third grade teacher that threw my art away, that I'm not artistic. I almost listened to my high school counselor that I wasn't smart. And by the example of my parents, that pretty much gave me the courage and the encouragement to do what I needed to do regardless. And had I realized then, that third grade teacher probably didn't know what she was doing anyway. And so she put me down. I don't know, that's my reverse psychology. I need to do that more. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share about that? Anyone out here have another question they'd like to ask? Okay, I have one more for Pat, actually. And I think that this, we'll probably just call this the last one unless someone raises their hand. Pat, it sounds like when you were laying in the hospital bed for those 3 months, that you came to the decision that no one was ever going to have that much control over your life again. But I have to imagine and assume that there were a lot of other things that were going on at that time. And I guess what I wonder is, what was it like, the life that you maybe hadn't even thought that you were going to have, you'd maybe even never thought about it as a senior in high school, suddenly things look so different. And was it hard to, how did you wrap your head around the idea that your life was going to be different now without falling into a deep, dark place?
Well, I did fall into that deep, dark place off and on. And like I said, I lost control. You know, I couldn't move my bed. I didn't have a TV. The telephone was always out of my reach. And thank goodness one of my classmates brought me a goldfish that I had on my stand. And in the dark times, I watched that goldfish for hours. And it was going around and around and up and down and back and forth. Same thing. And I was worried that I was watching my life. I was getting nowhere. And of course they were much more free with drugs back then. And I went into real high levels of drug for pain, and during surgery, I'd just get down off it and I'd have another surgery, get down off it, another surgery. So I'm lucky that I didn't come out of there a drug addict, for one thing. And I was young and I didn't have a profession, but the best decision I made while I was in there was I was going to college. I didn't think how I was going to do it or where I was going to go. But again, things they didn't just happen. It was supposed to be my life. Just like losing my leg. I knew from the very start why I lost my leg and why I didn't die. There was a reason I was here. And I have been pretty much a billboard for encouraging people. Did I set out to do that? No. But I'm very approachable and it's easy to do to help people. Mm-hmm. So I climbed out of that dark place as soon as I got out of the hospital. And that wasn't because I was ready to go, because our basketball team won district and we were going to state in Spokane. I had to go. And I asked my doctors, no, you're too fragile. I'd had another surgery, chances of infection, and I went into depression, and my vital signs started dropping. So finally it was, yes, okay, take your medicine, your parents take you, and you rest. Great, fine, I'm out of here. So I thank the basketball team for getting me out of the hospital. But that's just the spirit that I've always had, and I'm not sure. I think it was just the era that I was raised in. And my first manuscript, I don't know, I was at 30,000 words into it, and an author friend of mine read it, and she goes, you're too Pollyanna. You're not sharing your feelings. And it was like, well, that's the era I came from. Something happened to you, you picked yourself up by your bootstraps, and you went on and you did something different.
That's right.
And it wasn't until I put words to the deep pain and the sounds, the smells, the squeaking shoes, the clang of metal, describing when I was wheeled in to have my leg cut off. The squeaking of the muffled voices, the squeaking, the clang on the, thank God I didn't see the saw because I was laying down. But just, you wrap your head around that as an 18-year-old child, basically. I guess I was young and I didn't have the common sense to be scared. That was just the way it was. But I think I got it down because when we took a box of books to Mazatlan this year, a lady came to me the next day and she goes, "What's the deal? You even made my retired Marine cry." Okay, I did it.
Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished again.
Thank you. Okay, folks, any last questions for our group? All right, let's give them another big round of applause, and I'm going to give my mic back.
Okay, thank you, everyone, and especially all of you. Wow. I would now like to bring up Steve Stroud. He is the executive director of the Ripple Foundation, a friend and a mentor who has helped Teresa and Robin and I through these 9 years of creating the Elder Speak program. So Steve's going to give a few closing words, and then he will pass this on to Teresa.
Thank you, and thanks for being here. Here's a universal truth. We all get older, right? We all get older. How we get older is what we have a choice about. And these esteemed elders have showed us a way that we can get older. Somehow we move from childhood to adulthood into elderhood. It takes a lifetime. This particular program, the Elder Speak program, takes 9 months. 9 months. What else takes 9 months, right? There's a birth process here. When you see somebody has a new baby, you see the outcome. This is the outcome. What you might not experience is the depth of what that 9 months was like. That's what these elders have been through, that birth experience, to delve into their wisdom. There's always a few takeaways that I learn. I'm older now than I was when I came here. Am I any wiser? Yes. I'm on that journey, as I hope all of us are. And there's a few touchstones that I picked up in this last couple hours that I think is going to help me on that journey to wisdom. And I'm going to share what I've learned, and I'm sure you all have your own pieces of wisdom that you picked up. I know that the journey has to do with honesty, compassion, curiosity. It has to do with the fact that I hear you and that you can talk to me. It has to do with finding your own way, but asking for help. It has to do with feeling the wind in my face and becoming user-friendly. That's a good one, right? Write a book. Those are words of wisdom. Just keep getting up. Time to wake up. Love books. Life is precious. I am part of a family. Believe in yourself. You have value. You have value. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That is wisdom right here. How grateful I am to have that experience. The Elder Speak program is really an effort of love. And Deb and Teresa started this 10 years ago? 9 years ago. And in the process, they have written a book. It is for sale. It's available right out front. It's a book with the longing and the desire to take this work out into other communities. Now, you personally might not want to do that. Doesn't mean you shouldn't buy the book, right? It's available, $12.95 out front. We encourage you to support the Ripple Foundation and the Elder Speak program. This is priceless, right? This has been priceless, and all of the elders that have been through it understand that on a level that I can only say, but they understand it on a very deep, deep level. It's priceless doesn't mean it's not without expenses, right? The Ripple Foundation is a nonprofit. If you want to buy a book to support this beautiful work and bringing it out into the world, we would encourage that. We're pretty much wrapped up here. Teresa's going to come up in just a second. But we invite all of you and the elders, of course, to go out front after we're done and mingle, have some snacks, have some tea and water, whatever we have out there, and buy a book. All right. Yes, sir. A question? Right. I think this is extremely impressive. Right. I wouldn't mind just even another 15 minutes each. All right. So if everyone didn't hear that, this gentleman is asking for more of the elders, a longer program. Thank you for that. We do find this very valuable, and I'm sure Deb and Teresa will take that into consideration. And Robin, thank you. So, thank you. Teresa. Oh, here we go.
Dick gave me the suggestion. Come on up here. That we need to honor some previous alumni of the program. Would you please stand up, our alumni?
There's some
Or
Jan, you don't have to.
Jan, you don't have to. Jan Cook Mack in the wheelchair.
Pat Rutledge, Jan Wallach, Francis Collins, and Jerry Gibbons. Thank you so much.
Randy.
Oh, and
Randy.
Randy's.
I mean, no. Dennis.
I said Dennis.
Oh. Did you get Ed and Bev Baugh?
No, I didn't.
And Pat, Jan Cook Mack, of course. Anyway, thank you guys for coming. Yes. And here's Teresa.
Whew, it's so much to think about. Well, Bill, you asked you want to hear more. We have another event at Wenatchee Valley Museum and Cultural Center. This is our first year having 2 elder speaks. They have offered to hold another one October 12th from 7 to 9 p.m. So you're welcome to come. And thank you so much for coming today. We loved having you here.
Oh, wow.
One more thing. There are 2 other books for sale out in the lobby. We have Pat's book out there being sold by A Book for All Seasons is graciously handling that. And Steve Stroud's book, what's the name? Quest. Sorry, Steve. Quest is also a fabulous book, and it's for sale in the lobby. So please go to the book table and have a look. Thank you.